Hey guys, it's Pope. I have Meg with me again.
It's me, I'm Meg Squats. Follow me on YouTube.
Today we are going to be talking about the differences in sports between weightlifting and powerlifting, coming from an Olympic weightlifter and powerlifter. Both have been ranked top 10 in our sports the past couple years. Currently, my meet PRs are 91 kilos in snatch and 103 kilograms in the clean and jerk, and Meg competes in powerlifting.
And my best meet lifts are squat, I'll say pounds for us Americanos, 292 pounds for the squat, 165 pound bench, and a 386 deadlift.
And that gave you a finish?
This past nationals, I finished in 12th.
The year before, she was top 10, so 2 years in a row kicking ass at USAPL Nationals.
Yeah.
And she's done an Olympic weightlifting meet, and I competed at USAPL Nationals as well, so we've both dabbled in the other sport too.
So whenever I meet someone who doesn't even lift, they are so confused with what it is that I do, and I'm sure probably you even more, because weightlifting is, compared to general gym goers, is very strange.
Yeah, when I say I'm a weightlifter, a lot of times people think that just means like bodybuilding, like I'm in the gym doing curls, which is absolutely not that. The sport I compete in is technically Olympic style weightlifting. Weightlifting is the sport, and it's an Olympic sport. I compete in 2 lifts, the snatch and clean and jerk. The snatch is 1 movement from ground to overhead, and the clean and jerk is 2 movements. And Meg competes in powerlifting.
So that is the squat, bench, and deadlift. So those are more commonly known to the general gym person. Like,
right.
You can never train powerlifting or weightlifting and still kind of do those movements. And like most guys are interested in benching a lot. So most people's introduction to the gym may include, more
some
often than not, will include some powerlifting.
Probably movements. Not weightlifting.
Probably never.
When you just show up to LA Fitness, you're probably not going to hit a snatch workout. So the difference in equipment is pretty big. For meets, for Olympic lifting, all we need is the bar and bumper plates. The plates bounce, we drop them from overhead. We compete in kilos, so does powerlifters, but with the metal plates, y'all usually lift in pounds in training?
Most gyms have 45, 25 pound plates. So most of us train in pounds, and then come meet day, we have to scramble to figure out what we're going to lift in kilos. For the most part, I think there are a lot of gyms, as barbell clubs become more common, a lot of gyms are either training with weightlifters, so using the same plates, or buying competition plates so that they can train in kilos as well.
Right, and then for meets, y'all need the special rack.
So yeah, for meets, for deadlift, it's the same thing. You're just picking the bar up, so it's just a bar, and we use metal competition plates. And then for squat and bench, most the time they're using a Texas Strength Systems brand ER rack. So it's called an ER rack. If you ever want to get a piece of equipment that's like competition level, you can buy an ER rack, and then that is the same equipment you can use for both of those lifts.
A big difference in the 2 sports is how the actual competitions are set up. In weightlifting, the meet progresses with the bar moving up in weight throughout the competition, so it doesn't matter the order of people that it goes in. For example, if someone was opening their first snatch at 35 kilos and someone else was opening at 50 kilos, that first person might hit all 3 of their lifts before the second person even does 1 lift. Versus in powerlifting, the order stays the same. The first attempt goes in order of lightest to heaviest, but then everyone takes their first attempt, everyone takes their second attempt. So the meet setup is quite different, and it gives a bit of different strategy in the back room. And powerlifting, that's kind of not even a factor.
There can be strategy in regards to like maybe the last deadlift, but usually it's not. Also, people more often than weightlifting are making their attempts. So that attempt selection is a lot different. But yeah, usually it's just whoever is the strongest generally. Doesn't matter if they're the strongest on that day for the most part. depending on how high level of competition it is. Usually the strongest person always wins.
Yeah,
whereas
so
in weightlifting, you can just miss a lift.
Yeah, it's common to miss your opener in weightlifting a lot more than powerlifting. That's pretty if you don't know what you're doing.
If you miss your opener in powerlifting, it happens. It happens a lot. But people will make fun of you. For sure.
Weightlifting, that's pretty common to even go miss, and then make your same weight on the third.
Right.
So that adds a lot of strategy and a different factors to the coaching even at meets for weightlifting, because having people follow themselves changes the clock, and you can even try to throw off someone else's warm-ups by changing your attempt, letting your clock run down without getting inside of 30 seconds. You can change your attempt and bump up in weight, and that messes up someone else's timing to take their attempt.
That's messed up.
Yes, but it's all part of the game. It's all part of the sport, and that's a big difference in the two.
Okay, next we're going to talk about the the atmosphere and the ambiance of watching and competing in a powerlifting meet versus a weightlifting meet. My first meet experience was at the American Open 2015. Is that right? 2014. December.
DC was 14.
2014, December, my first meet. It was really cool because I think it was the first and really only time they did the American Open for both weightlifting and powerlifting. Now, weightlifting, it's a much bigger deal, but I think because it was in DC and a lot of people on the East Coast could get to the meet easily, that powerlifting meet ended up being pretty big, yeah. So that was... like, the two were separated by a pretty thick curtain, so I hope that you guys couldn't hear us. I'm sure you did. But it was powerlifting meet in one ballroom and weightlifting meet in the next ballroom, separated by a curtain. And the vibe between those two are very, very different.
It was like two different worlds.
Yeah.
And you had to walk through powerlifting to get to weightlifting. So you're like, oh, look at this crazy me. And then it was like, oh, we're in a library.
Yeah. So watching weightlifting is very quiet. It's not common for someone to be like in the middle of a snatch and people yelling at them. It's very like golf clapping. It's a little more refined, whereas powerlifting, it's common if someone's in the bottom of a squat, people are just cheering and yelling and like, come on, let's go, motherfucker.
Music's blasting.
Yeah.
The pirate.
Exactly, yeah. And they have like this MC, every USAPL meet, every big USAPL meet, they have this like MC pirate, Gino is his name, and he gets everyone really excited. He's like saying jokes the entire time. He knows all the lifters, so he's like saying inside jokes and everyone's laughing and it's great. So it's like a party for 4 hours.
And coming from CrossFit as my gateway into weightlifting, there's kind of this push for weightlifting to become more like that. And it's kind of like the old school weightlifters want to keep it quiet and no music and just kind of like keep the sport how it used to be. And now that a lot of CrossFitters are getting into weightlifting, and powerlifting and the CrossFit competition scene is kind of similar, and I see hopefully in the future weightlifting becoming more like that and having more crowd involvement. Some of the meets, like the Arnold this year was great, had some really awesome music playing the whole time and the crowd was really into it. So I'm hoping to see like USAW Nationals and American Open in the future be more like that and not so library-like.
Not so buttoned up.
Yeah. I know a big difference in the training as far as like meet week goes. Y'all don't hit heavy lifts the week of your meet?
No. Maybe 7 days out, you'll hit your openers, but that is about as close to the meet you'll get to be hitting an opener, which maybe an opener is like 70% or something you can hit for a triple.
Yeah, I could never hit my opener for a triple.
Yeah. Right. See?
So that's quite different, but also we hit our openers a lot closer to the meet, especially female lifters. The bigger guys are more like a week out, 10 days out, but the lady lifters usually hit their openers Monday, Tuesday of like a Saturday meet, so that's a lot different. And we're still squatting a couple days before and hitting lifts at the meet venue the day before even.
The week before for me is like just to get moving, maybe hit those openers 7 days out. And then I still want to be in the gym because I want to feel weight on my back a little bit, but it's like
light. Another big difference in the sports is having a lot of people compete in multiple federations versus maybe 99% of weightlifters compete in USA Weightlifting sanctioned meets. There are a couple other options that are creeping up lately, like Attitude Nation Federation, and I've seen a couple people competing in AAU weightlifting. But basically anyone that's competitive in weightlifting competes in the USAW because that is the feed to the Olympic Games. And powerlifting is quite different on that
we
front.
don't have a feed to the Olympic Games. So pretty much we do have a world federations. There is the IPF, which is the biggest federation, and it's also the only drug tested federation.
Right.
So IPF is International Powerlifting Federation, and in the United States we compete in the USAPL, which feeds into the IPF,
which USAW goes into IWF.
Right. So that is the only federation that really, as far as I know, that really drug tests, and that's the biggest federation. So I would say most natural lifters compete there. Now, USAPL has been growing on the West Coast. So a lot of West Coast lifters that I meet, even if they're natural, have competed in USPA. So that's just out of convenience. I think there's just more meets in the USPA, especially in California. So now that USAPL is getting bigger, they're starting to go into USAPL if they're natural. But if you're not a natural athlete, there are federations that just don't drug test. So USPA is one of them. I think SPF does not test. Most federations do, but there's like Raw Unity, there's 100% Raw, there's like
there's a bunch of them.
100. And then you also have equipped powerlifting. So I'm speaking only to the raw powerlifting side, but then there is single ply and multiply. There's squatting with wraps.
So many different options.
There's many different options. So it can get really diluted as far as competition goes. So someone can say they're a world record holder, and this happens a lot. Someone is a world record holder, but they are not a world record holder across all federations. Right. So I would always look if someone's claiming a powerlifting world record to see if they are that world record holder across all federations. And it's really cool if they're a world record holder across all federations and they compete in the IPF, because then they're getting drug tested.
Yeah, and USA Weightlifting, everything is tested now, even local meets, which USAPL is the same way. So
Right.
we don't have any of those, I guess if you're competing in those new federations, I guess they're not drug testing, but almost all weightlifters are getting drug tested if they're competing.
And since I've been competing, and as far as I know, I think USAPL has always, at a local level, kept the drug test frequent.
And that's new for us. We just started testing at local meets for USA Weightlifting.
We were talking a little bit about the differences in physique, which I think maybe people might think that there's a different look to each sport. And I would say that at the top, like the best of each weight class,
everyone is jacked.
Everyone is jacked. And it's just, maybe you guys probably have bigger traps, for sure.
Pulling.
Yeah, but I would say at the top level of each weight class, everyone's pretty lean. Obviously, for women, when you get to like 84 plus or the higher weight class, it's a little bit different.
But in both sports, it's an advantage to fill your class with as much lean muscle as possible.
Yeah, so if you want to get jacked and you're not sure which one to do, you can probably do either and be fine.
There's no powerlifters are fat or weightlifters are fat. I've heard both sides of that.
You can be fat. There's a weight class for everyone.
Right.
There's no problem there.
But looking at the best of the best, they're all pretty low body fat percentage. It is a pretty big no-no in weightlifting to walk in front of a lifter while they're lifting. Maybe not at light percentages, but definitely during the heavier workouts, and that's not as big of a deal in powerlifting, you said?
I think you maybe it's not the best thing to walk in front of someone when they're deadlifting, but we talked about this a little bit. The eye gaze is different, whereas in weightlifting, you might be looking straight ahead. In powerlifting, usually your head is looking maybe like 6 feet in front of you on the floor.
And the speed is a lot different. So our focal point may be even more important than a powerlifter's focal point, because we're moving through a plane and very rapidly, and y'all are moving slowly.
Right.
At heavy lifts, at least.
Yeah.
So the top tier of weightlifting goals would probably be to make an Olympic team or make a world championship team and be getting a paid stipend by USAW. So that is kind of the pot of gold at the top of weightlifting, and y'all don't really have that. So what is
There's no pot
what's
of
the
gold.
top goal of powerlifting?
So there have been a few prize money meets, and there's a really big one that Gracie Vanas is putting on that we're actually going to this weekend, and that's called the US Open. Now that's a USPA, I believe, meet, and it's not drug tested, so the best of the best in the world are most likely using. I know
some heavy shit.
Yeah, and it's like unbelievable how strong these people are. So they have really, really high payouts, like tens of thousands of dollars for winning a weight class. So I think it's like 20 or 30,000 to win only a weight class. And I think there's only like 8 lifters per weight class, because it's an invite only meet.
It's gonna be so fun.
I know, it's gonna be fun to watch. But so that's one of the only examples of a real prize money meet that could actually make a difference in the average person's life. Whereas winning $1,000 in a meet might pay for your trip out there, right, or might pay for some funds, but it's probably not going to change the game to where you can be like a professional powerlifter.
Yeah.
We have some of those meets like at the Arnold. But if you were to win what I would consider the highest level of competition in powerlifting, if you were to win world championship powerlifting, IPF powerlifting title, you don't get any money.
Yeah. Well, it's the same in USAW, but you do earn a stipend once you hit a certain level, and they will pay you a monthly kind of income to be that good at weightlifting.
As far as I know, there's no stipend at all.
A shame.
I think there are other countries who do award their powerlifters stipends, and they do have programs for powerlifting, but the U.S. is not one of them, which is surprising because the U.S. always sweeps.
Yeah, isn't the U.S. like way better than everyone else at powerlifting?
Yeah, like especially the women's team, I think won at least podiumed literally every class.
And that's not the same in weightlifting. We're getting there. We've got some superstars like CJ Cummings coming up that might change the game for the USA, but right now we are not at the top. That's pretty cool. Y'all are the best.
Well, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, yeah. So breaking down the strength movements differences in the sports. Pressing, I have trained bench pressing this past year while I was getting ready for USAPL Nationals because I wanted to compete in the bench press. You're not going to see a lot of weightlifters that are bench pressing. I know a few that do. I found it beneficial to try to put some more size on my upper body because I've had trouble with this weird left arm. But more often than not, you're going to see weightlifters doing the overhead press, and y'all are benching because you compete in the bench. And also, like you talked about earlier, like guys want to have a big bench.
Yeah. So, yeah, and the bench press is probably a more commonly general gym bro approach.
How much your bench?
Yeah, it's like so common. It's so common of a movement for a lot of bros and like people just getting into their gym. We do overhead press, but more often than not, it's a strict press rather than like a push press or
we
any
do a lot of push press.
Any momentum movement. Usually it's strict. So we use those as accessories, but we're competing in the bench press, so more often than not, the variations are more specific to laying down and like pausing on the chest and then pressing.
Yeah, and a big reason, myself being an example, why we do not do bench press is because it makes our overhead mobility for the snatch that much harder to maintain.
Because you don't want to get too swollen.
Yeah.
Here. Squatting, more often than not, you'll see a weightlifter squatting either front squats or high bar back squats, very, very upright to support what they're doing in competition. Whereas powerlifters, a lot of times, even though we do use front squats and high bar squats as variations, more often than not, you'll see a powerlifter squatting low bar. So the bar is just not, instead of being on top of your traps, it's like 2 or 3 inches down on your back. And the reason we do that is to recruit more of your posterior chain, and you're recruiting more muscle groups than just quads.
So in weightlifting, we want to squat as upright as possible to build our quads as much as possible and to mimic the straight up and down bar path that we need for the clean and the snatch. So it's not that useful for us to work on the low bar squat or squatting more like lean forward, getting the glutes and hamstrings more involved, because everything we do is super upright and we want to be able to maintain that front rack position in the clean. There are some lifters like Mary Peck, I know, does the low bar back squat. I think that's working around injuries. Similar to me, like most people don't front squat only, but that seems to be what works for me. So I know there's some variation in that. It's not a hard and fast rule, but most weightlifters are going to high bar squat. Something I get asked about a lot is the way that I do my snatch and clean grip deadlifts. The way that we do our pull training is always mimicking the pull for the Olympic lifts for the snatch and the clean. So seeing a locked out, hips pulled through, shoulders over the bar finish of a deadlift is not going to be in either of those movements. So we stop our pulls at just before the power position where we would jump and extend. So we're training being as strong as possible with our shoulders over the bar and hips still closed so that it's right at that moment of explosion when we make contact. So when you see me do deadlifts, you're not going to see me fully extend, which was something interesting in my powerlifting meet I did. Finishing that lockout was a little awkward, and Chad was like, oh, let's not get a red light for a hitch. So you're going to see a powerlifter pull straight up the leg and pull their hips through. It's as fast as possible, right?
Yeah. So a lot of people will find a sticking point right at that moment. So judges will look for the hitch, which probably you're so used to stopping there.
Right.
And then like reminding yourself to turn it on. So I can see how he would be concerned with that. But yeah, I in the sumo deadlift get stuck just before the lockout. When it gets heavy enough, my glutes just aren't strong enough to pull it when it's like 400 pounds. So yeah, it's important to always train with that fully extended and never get in the habit of slowing down at any point in the deadlift. So
when you deadlift, you don't want to be using your quads necessarily at the top. You're using as much posterior as possible.
Correct. I'll sometimes tense and think about flexing my quads at the start of a sumo pull.
Off the floor.
Yeah, off the floor.
So with us, we want to keep our quads in the game as long as possible. So that's why we train it staying leaned over the bar for our pulls. You need to subscribe to your channel too, though.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope now you are educated on the differences between the two sports that we compete in, but we're still friends. A lot of times you'll see powerlifters and weightlifters training at the same gym all the time. We're all homies. We're all strength athletes. We're just trying to get good.
Strong as fuck.
Yeah. So hopefully this clears up some of the maybe misconceptions or confusion between the two, especially if you're just now getting involved with lifting or strength sports in general. I think both are good options. It's really just
They're both fun.
Yeah, it's really just a matter of what you like doing. And I hate weightlifting, so that's why I don't do it.
I like powerlifting.
I'm pretty bad at weightlifting. That's why I don't do it.
But I do have a love for weightlifting.
Yeah, it's good. And you can maybe go to the Olympics. We're hoping. So thank you guys so much for watching this. And make sure you comment below if you have any more questions or want to see another video topic with a power lifter and a weightlifter. Comment down below, and maybe next time we see each other we'll do another one. And also like the video if you enjoyed this. Make sure to subscribe to Kristen's channel that you're on right now that I'm closing out, and then when you're done with this video, search Make Squats and subscribe to my channel.
Thanks.
And that's it.
Bye.